By the blessed name of Allah, the most merciful and very gracious. Welcome to the night. Today, we've got a really fascinating explainer for you.
So before we begin, go ahead and take a deep breath. Let the worries of the day just slowly fade away. Relax your shoulders, rest your eyes, and just let your mind settle into a calm, peaceful state. Because tonight, we're diving into a true story. It's a modern mystery about a hidden world of technology and really the simple human curiosity that connects all of us. Section 1. The strange office calls. Imagine for a moment that you're sitting at a quiet office desk. It's just a totally ordinary morning, right? The phone rings. You pick it up, fully expecting to hear a customer on the other end, but instead, you hear the muffled sounds of a busy town square. You're hearing footsteps, you hear the wind. You say hello, but nobody answers. It's almost like a secret window just opened up into the life of a complete stranger somewhere far, far away. Well, this is exactly what happened to a woman named Jody. She lived a totally normal life, working as a receptionist in New Jersey for a company that sold web addresses to lawyers. She had this standard Toshiba telephone on her desk, and it was her job to answer the company's toll-free 1-800 number. Starting one December, that quiet routine completely shattered. When Jody answered her phone, she'd sometimes hear these loud, screeching noises, kind of like an old-school computer modem. Other times, it was this quiet, simple musical melody. Now, most people would just hang up, right? But soon, the calls started changing. She began hearing real sounds from the outside world, the humming machines of a public laundromat, a crystal-clear conversation of somebody actually running a criminal background check on a stranger. Some of these calls were even left on her voicemail overnight. In one recording, you could vividly hear a basketball game, like the ball bouncing, the rubber sneakers squeaking super loudly on the wood floor, a kid talking to their mom. Another call had a family chatting outside, birds chirping, and then this heavy, massive sound of a passing train horn. Honestly, it felt like the private lives of people all over America were just being broadcast straight into Jody's little office.
So, you could imagine, faced with this bizarre mystery, Jody was pretty confused and, frankly, a little freaked out. She started wondering, was the government listening to her? Was some secret agency like the NSA accidentally routing their private wiretaps to her desk? And, it's really common to think that when our tech acts up, it means some shadowy authority is spying on us. But the reality is usually quite different. Assuming we're always being watched just creates this heavy shadow of fear and paranoia. It makes us stop trusting our neighbors. The truth is, these weird electronic events, they're almost always just simple technical glitches or financial exploits, not massive government conspiracies. So seeking the truth logically is what actually brings us peace of mind and gets rid of that fear.
Which brings us to Section 2, Searching for the Truth. Jody wanted answers, so she reached out to two investigative journalists, PJ and Alex. They decided to team up and help her solve this whole thing.
Their very first clue was pretty obvious, the phone numbers. Every single time Jody got one of these strange calls, her phone screen displayed a different caller ID. So the investigator made a massive list of these numbers and just started calling them back. But the results? Highly, highly confusing. The people who picked up had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. For example, he called the number that was supposed to be the busy town square, but a quiet dental office answered the phone. He called the number linked to that quiet musical melody, and a guy literally answers going, "Huzzah! Welcome to the Carolina Renaissance Festival." He even called the number for the basketball game and got this super friendly woman in Montana. She kindly checked her calendar and was like, nope, she hadn't been anywhere near a basketball court all day. So what did this mean? The numbers were entirely fake. The caller was actually hiding their true identity, using a trick we call spoofing. Now, some people might think that masking who you are to trick someone is just a clever little game. But let's be real. Honest communication is literally the foundation of human connection. Deception breaks trust, and without trust, our whole society kind of loses its way.
Moving on with the investigation, they noticed Jody was using a modern phone system called VoIP. This sends voice calls over the internet, pretty much exactly like sending an email. The investigator tracked down the company providing Jody's service and finally managed to get their super busy expert Harley Bittman on the line. And here's a funny little moment. When the investigator introduced himself as working for a company called Gimlet, Harley totally thought he said giblet, like a small piece of a chicken. They had a good laugh about it. But really, it's just a gentle reminder of how easily we humans can misunderstand each other, even over a crystal clear connection, and why having a bit of patience goes a long way.
Anyway, Harley listened to the recordings and she was absolutely blown away. In her line of work, she sees some crazy computer crimes. She even told the investigator about a time hackers broke into a phone system and racked up $19,000 worth of expensive calls in a single day.
During this chat, an interesting claim came up. You'll often hear people say that massive phone crimes are the fault of specific terrorist nations, or they'll point fingers at entire countries like Saudi Arabia or the Philippines as being entirely to blame. But the reality? That's completely false. International law enforcement, like the FBI, have proven over and over that these massive cybercrimes are committed by individuals from dozens of different countries worldwide, all working together. These criminals are united by one thing: greed, not nationality. Spreading stories that blame entire nations or cultures really just creates unfair hatred and weakens our shared humanity. As an explainer of the facts, it's important to point out that we have to judge individuals by their own actions, not by where they happen to be born. Let's move to Section 3, the invisible audio trap. Harley knew these calls were intentional, but she couldn't figure out exactly how the trick worked. So the investigator took the audio files to an advanced technology expert named Dave. Now at first, Dave thought it was just your run-of-the-mill, boring technical glitch. But when he sat down and actually listened to the audio in the quiet of his room, he was shocked. He said it felt like listening to this incredibly engaging television show where you're constantly wondering what's going to happen next.
And then, Dave made an absolutely brilliant discovery. He took the recording of that basketball game from March 6th and compared it to a completely different call Jody got 3 weeks later on March 28th. Guess what? They were exactly the same. Word for word, squeak for squeak. These calls were not live windows into the world at all. They were pre-recorded audio files. Someone had purposefully designed these sounds to be as mysterious as possible. Dave realized the chilling truth. They were all eating bait in a carefully designed trap. Unfortunately, right before Dave could solve the rest of the puzzle, a massive computer virus hit Ukraine, and he had to travel across the globe to help fix it. So the investigator was on his own once again.
This leads us to Section 4, uncovering the master plan. For months, the investigator scoured the globe for answers, and finally, he struck gold with a guy named James Brown, who was an absolute expert in tracking phone data. James hadn't just heard these weird calls, he had actually collected over 10,000 of them.
James had set up a honeypot, basically a trap of his own, using 20,000 different phone numbers just to study the enemy. What he found was fascinating. These calls were not being made by a human. They were generated by a highly intelligent, fully automated computer program. This bot would literally wake up at 6 in the morning, make hundreds of thousands of phone calls all day long, and then politely go to sleep in the evening. It even took holidays off just to blend in with normal human working patterns. Crazy, right? But that leaves us with the million-dollar question. Why? How on earth does making weird, cryptic phone calls actually make anyone money? Let's break it down in Section 5, how the scam worked. To understand this, we just need to look at the basic mechanics of a tool-free 1-800 number. When you or I call a normal number, we pay the bill. But when you call a 1-800 number, the business you're calling covers the cost. So here's the fractional penny exploit. When Jody's company pays for an incoming call, that money gets shared between all the different regional phone companies that helped connect that line across the country. Every single company takes a tiny, tiny slice, literally just a fraction of a single penny. To put that into perspective, imagine dropping 1 grain of sand into a large jar. It seems like absolutely nothing. But if a computer drops hundreds of thousands of grains of sand into that jar every single day, it's going to overflow really fast. Basically, a fraudster made a dark deal with a shady phone company. The fraudster used their automated program to make millions of calls to these 1-800 numbers. The shady phone company collected all those tiny fractions of a penny, and together they shared millions of dollars in secret profit.
But there was one major hurdle the fraudster had to overcome. If a computer calls your phone and it's just dead silence, you're going to say hello and hang up in 2 seconds, right? Well, a 2-second call makes zero money. They needed to keep that phone line open for as long as possible. So they decided to weaponize human curiosity. They played the sounds of a passing train, a lovely bird, or a really private-sounding family conversation. We humans are just naturally curious creatures. Jody even admitted she used to leave the phone sitting on her desk for 20 minutes at a time, just listening, trying to solve the puzzle. And for every minute she listened, that fraudster was getting richer. Now, some people think these cyber criminals are invincible. These guys were even using robotic voices to read news articles straight from the White House website, basically mocking the authorities. But here's the thing, no deception lasts forever. Law enforcement agencies like the FBI have incredibly deep intelligence networks.
They track these people down, and historical records prove that these masterminds do eventually face justice. Dishonesty is really just a house built on sand. Eventually, it's going to collapse.
Which brings us to Section 6, the final call. Eventually, the FBI did step in to handle the situation, and Jody was so relieved. The mystery was finally solved, but right after she hung up the phone with the investigator, she received one final, very strange call.
It was a robotic voice reading a sacred text, a beautiful passage from the Bible, praising God and speaking of peace. Now, some might assume that hearing a holy text over the phone means the caller must have good intentions. But the reality is, using sacred words as a disguise to steal money is just a profound disrespect to faith. True religion and genuine goodness require honest work, absolute truth, and a deep respect for others. Beautiful words mean absolutely nothing if the actions behind them are built entirely on deception.
Let's wrap things up with Section 7, a peaceful resolution. In the end, it wasn't just law enforcement that stopped this crime wave. Back in the year 2020, the Government Telecommunications Agency actually went in and fundamentally changed the rules of the whole system.
They created a brand new model where phone companies could no longer charge each other those tiny fractions of a penny just for connecting toll-free calls. And by removing that money, they completely destroyed the trap. The financial incentive was instantly gone. And just like that, the phantom callers faded away into the past.
As we come to the end of our explainer tonight, there's definitely some comfort in how neatly this resolved. A really complex web of deception was unraveled by patience, logic, and just the simple pursuit of the truth. You know, life is often full of confusing noise, a lot like those strange, out-of-context sounds on Jody's phone. We might hear things we don't fully understand, and our minds can easily race to fearful conclusions. But when we look closely, when we seek knowledge with a calm, honest heart, those shadows disappear. Truth brings clarity, justice brings balance, and honesty is the gentle light that guides humanity forward. So let the noise of the day fall silent now. Rest your mind, knowing that truth is a firm, steady ground. Sleep well, and may peace be with you. But, right as you close your eyes, I want you to ask yourself, what other invisible traps are operating right now just beneath the surface of our everyday technology?